The stars glimmered like tiny diamonds against the deep black canvas of space. Captain Jae-hyun Park sat in his command chair, fingers lightly tapping the armrest. The bridge of the ISS horizon hummed with quiet energy. This was supposed to be a routine exploration mission. Nothing more, nothing less. Lieutenant Sarah Rodriguez looked up from her navigation console. "Captain, we're detecting an unusual energy signature about 2 parsecs ahead." Jae-hyun leaned forward. Unusual was never good in deep space exploration. "Show me," he said, his voice calm but alert. The holographic display flickered to life. A massive structure emerged, not quite a ship, not quite a station. It's designed to fight everything the human crew understood about spacecraft engineering. Geometric shapes shifted and realigned, almost like a living organism breathing in the vacuum of space. "Is that moving?" asked Ensign Michael Chen, his voice a mix of wonder and concern. Before anyone could respond, a burst of light erupted from the structure. Communication systems crackled. Strange symbols danced across the ship's screens, a language no human had ever seen before. Jae-hyun's training kicked in. First contact protocols were clear. Maintain position. Do not make any aggressive movements, he instructed. The response came unexpectedly, not in sound, but in thought. Waves of complex information flooded the horizon's communication systems. The crew felt more than heard the message, a mixture of curiosity, caution, and something else. Something alien. Lieutenant Rodriguez's hands flew across her console. "Captain, I'm translating fragments. They're trying to understand us." The alien structure continued to shift. Its outer layers rippled like liquid metal, changing colors from deep purple to a shimmering silver. Sensors went wild, detecting energy signatures that defied known physics. "They're scanning us," Ensign Chen muttered. "Completely scanning our entire ship." Jae-hyun remained calm. His years of training had prepared him for the unexpected. Maintain communication channels. Show no fear. Suddenly, a crystal-like projection materialized on the bridge. It wasn't a hologram in any traditional sense. The projection seemed to breathe, to think. Eyes, if they could be called eyes, formed and dissolved, studying the human crew with an intensity that was both terrifying and fascinating. A voice emerged, not through speakers, but directly in their minds. "Humans," it said. The word carried layers of meaning, confusion, intrigue, a hint of something close to respect. The crew remained still. Protocol demanded observation, not reaction. The alien presence continued to study them. Jae-hyun could feel waves of information passing through the ship, centuries of human history, technological development, cultural complexity, all being absorbed in mere moments. Unexpected, the mental voice continued. Highly adaptive, unpredictable. Lieutenant Rodriguez whispered, "They're analyzing us." Jae-hyun nodded slightly. This was more than a first contact scenario. This was a moment that would change everything humans understood about their place in the universe. The alien structure began to pulse with a rhythmic light. More messages flooded the ship's systems, fragments of understanding mixed with complete confusion. The aliens were trying to comprehend humanity, but something about humans resisted simple categorization. "Fascinating," the mental voice repeated, but now there was an undertone. Something close to concern. Ensign Chen's instruments went crazy. Energy readings spiked, then dropped, then transformed into patterns no computer could fully interpret. The alien structure was learning, adapting, changing its entire approach to communication with each passing second. Jae-hyun realized something profound. This wasn't just a meeting between two species. This was a complex dance of understanding, where every movement, every thought, was a potential bridge or barrier. "Hold position," he repeated to his crew, "and prepare for anything." Outside the ship, the alien structure continued to shift and change. A silent promise hung in the void of space. Nothing would be the same after this moment. First contact had begun. The Vreli research facility floated like a crystal fortress in the cold darkness of space. Inside, scientific council members gathered around a massive circular chamber. Their silicon-based bodies gleamed under artificial lights, each member a perfect geometric shape of calculated precision. "We must test these humans," declared senior researcher Krill, his crystalline form shifting with agitation. Their first contact report suggests impossible capabilities. The chamber before them was a marvel of scientific engineering. Its walls could change in milliseconds, shifting gravity, radiation levels, atmospheric composition, and temperature with impossible speed. No known species had ever survived more than a few seconds in such an environment. A human stood at the entrance. Min-Ki Kim, young, calm, wearing a simple protective suit that looked almost laughably primitive compared to the advanced Vreli technology. "Are you certain you understand the test?" asked a Vreli researcher. Her voice carried a mixture of scientific curiosity and barely hidden condescension. Min-Ki smiled. "I understand completely." The observation deck filled with Vreli scientists. Sensors tracked every possible biological reading. Cameras captured every microscopic detail. This was more than an experiment. This was a challenge to everything they understood about life itself. "Initiating test sequence," announced a computerized voice. The chamber began to change. First, gravity shifted, from standard Earth-like conditions to 10 times normal pressure, then to zero gravity, then to a crushing force that would pulverize most organic structures. Min-Ki's body moved. Muscles tensed. Something was happening at a cellular level that the Vreli had never seen before. Radiation levels spiked. Intense gamma rays bombarded the chamber, levels that would instantly destroy any known biological organism. Min-Ki's skin seemed to shimmer, not from protective gear, but from something happening underneath. Temperature plummeted to near absolute zero, then instantly rose to levels that would melt most metals. Min-Ki's body adapted. Cellular structures reconfigured. Blood flow adjusted. Nervous system rewired itself in real time. The Vreli scientists watched in growing horror. "Impossible," whispered Krill. Atmospheric composition changed rapidly, from oxygen-rich to pure nitrogen, then to an atmosphere so toxic it would kill most species in microseconds. Min-Ki's breathing changed. His lungs seemed to restructure themselves, filtering and adapting to each new environment. 12 minutes passed. In the observation deck, silence reigned. The human had not only survived but showed signs of active adaptation. His body was learning, changing, responding to each environmental challenge with impossible speed. "Run additional tests," demanded Krill. More challenges came. Pressure variations that would crush submarines, radiation levels that could sterilize entire planets, temperature ranges from the coldest ice worlds to the hottest stellar surfaces. Min-Ki remained calm. His body continued to change. The Vreli researchers checked and rechecked their instruments. This was not possible. No species could adapt this quickly. No biological system could restructure itself so completely in real time. After 30 minutes, the test ended. Min-Ki stepped out of the chamber. He looked normal, completely normal, as if he had just taken a casual walk. "Test complete," he said simply. The senior researchers gathered. Their crystalline bodies vibrated with a mix of fear and scientific excitement. "Analysis," demanded Krill. A junior researcher brought up the data. Cellular mutation rates, genetic restructuring, neurological adaptation, metabolic reconfiguration. Every single reading showed something unprecedented. The human had not just survived. He had fundamentally changed in response to the environment. "This changes everything," whispered one researcher. Krill remained silent. For the first time in his long scientific career, he felt something close to fear. Humans were not just another species. They were something else entirely. Something that could become anything. The United Galactic Research Center buzzed with nervous energy. Holographic displays flickered with complex genetic data. Hyunwoo Lee stood at the center of a massive laboratory, surrounded by scientists from a dozen different alien species. "We need to understand," said Dr. Zara, a Klixian researcher with multiple eye stalks. Her voice carried a mix of frustration and fear. "How do humans do this?" Hyunwoo smiled. He held a small device that looked like a simple crystal chip, but this was no ordinary piece of technology. It contained the key to human genetic potential. "Watch," he said simply. The laboratory fell silent. The genetic chip began to project a three-dimensional model of human DNA, but this was unlike any genetic structure anyone had ever seen. Where most species had rigid, fixed genetic codes, human DNA looked like a living, breathing system. Strands of genetic material moved. They twisted. They connected and reconnected in patterns that defied traditional understanding of biology. "Adaptive markers," Hyunwoo explained. "We call them evolution triggers." Avrili scientist leaned forward. Her crystalline body hummed with scientific curiosity. "Explain," she demanded. Hyunwoo touched the holographic display. The DNA strands began to change color. Some sections glowed bright blue. Others pulsed with deep red energy. "Most species have fixed genetic responses," he said. "When environment changes, they die. Humans are different. Our DNA has built-in adaptation protocols." He showed them how human genetic code could literally reshape itself, not over generations, not over years, but in moments. The laboratory watched in stunned silence. A section of DNA that controlled skin pigmentation suddenly shifted. It restructured to provide better protection against unknown radiation. Another section, related to muscle density, began to modify itself, preparing for potential changes in gravity or physical stress. "This is impossible," whispered a Klixian researcher. Hyunwoo kept explaining. "Humans don't just survive. We prepare. Our genetic code is a living system that constantly analyzes potential threats and prepares responses." More demonstrations followed. They introduced various environmental challenges: radiation, temperature changes, chemical exposures. Each time, the human genetic model adapted, restructured, prepared. The alien scientists were terrified. "You mean to say," asked Dr. Zara, "that your species can potentially adapt to any environment?" Hyunwoo didn't answer immediately. He simply smiled. More genetic models appeared. They showed how human DNA contained markers that could activate under extreme stress, markers that could trigger rapid cellular modifications, markers that could fundamentally change biological structures in moments. A Vrili researcher calculated something on her advanced computer. "Statistical probability of survival in unknown environments," she announced. "For humans, 99.987%. For all other known species, less than 0.03%. The room went completely silent. Humans were not just another species. They were a biological marvel, the living system of constant adaptation and potential. "There's more," Hyunwoo said. He showed them something even more shocking. Human genetic code didn't just adapt. It learned. Each adaptation became part of the genetic memory. Stored, remembered, ready to be used again. "We are always changing," he explained. "Always growing. Always becoming something new." The alien scientists looked at each other, fear mixed with a strange kind of respect. Humans were not conquering the galaxy through weapons. They were doing it through something far more powerful: the ability to become anything, to survive everywhere, to adapt. The emergency alarm screamed. Red lights flashed across the communication deck. Dong Ha Park stood surrounded by broken equipment, sparking wires, and what looked like total chaos. 3 alien species watched in disbelief. Their joint communication network had completely failed. Massive solar interference had destroyed standard quantum communication channels. Every other species would have been cut off. Isolated, vulnerable, not the humans. "I need that broken power coupling," Dong-ha called to his assistant. His hands moved faster than most could follow. Parts from life support systems, pieces of personal computers, random electronic components scattered across the deck. The Orcs diplomatic representative leaned forward. His multiple eyes blinked in confusion. What is he doing? No one answered. Dong-ha worked. His fingers moved like they had a mind of their own. He wasn't just fixing equipment. He was creating something entirely new. A junior engineer watched in amazement. Sir, those components don't even match. They can't possibly work together. Dong-ha smiled. Suddenly, a new communication signal burst through the chaos. Clear, strong, using a frequency no one had ever seen before. The signal wasn't just working. It was better than the original system. Quantum entanglement rebuilt using medical scanner components and a personal tablet, Dong-ha explained casually, as if he had just made a simple sandwich. The Orcs representative's mouth dropped open. His translator struggled to process what had just happened. More demonstrations followed. When their primary navigation computer crashed, Dong-ha rebuilt the entire system using kitchen appliance circuits and a handheld gaming device. When communication encryption was compromised, he created a new security protocol using parts from a medical diagnostic tool. Humans don't see problems, he told the stunned alien observers. We see opportunities. The communication deck transformed. What had been a disaster zone now looked like a revolutionary research laboratory. New technology emerged from what others would have considered garbage. A really scientist calculated something on her advanced computer. Probability of successful system rebuild using random components. For humans, 94.6%. For all other species, 0.002%. More alien representatives arrived. They watched in growing fear and fascination. Dong-ha kept working. Each new challenge became another chance to create, to improvise, to transform. The broken became the beautiful. The impossible became possible. When the test ended, the communication systems were not just repaired. They were improved, made stronger, more flexible, more intelligent. How? Asked the Orcs representative. How do you do this? Dong-ha looked up. His eyes showed something beyond simple technical skill. We don't know the meaning of impossible, he said simply. The aliens looked at each other. They understood something profound was happening. Humans were not just another species trying to survive. They were a species that could turn any challenge into an opportunity. They could make magic from broken things. They could create something from nothing. And no one could predict what they would do next. The testing chamber looked more like a nightmare than a research facility. Bright lights, strange sounds, walls that could change color and shape in seconds. Psychological sensors covered every inch of the space. Researcher Sung Min Choi sat in the center, calm, steady, watching. The alien scientists had a simple goal: break the human, push him to his mental limits, show the galaxy that humans were not as strong as they seemed. Test 1. Sensory overload. Sounds crashed from every direction. Lights flashed in patterns designed to cause maximum confusion. Frequencies that would drive most species into instant mental breakdown played at maximum volume. Sung Min closed his eyes, breathed slowly. The Vrili researchers watched in growing frustration. Their most advanced psychological warfare techniques were not working. Impossible, whispered Dr. Krax, the lead researcher. Test 2. Emotional manipulation. Holographic projections appeared. Scenes of total destruction. Family members in danger. Personal memories twisted and transformed into nightmares. Each image was calculated to trigger maximum emotional response. Sung Min remained calm. His brain was doing something the aliens had never seen. Not blocking the emotions, not fighting them, but processing them, understanding them, transforming them. Where other species would break, he was learning. Test 3. Isolation and fear. The chamber went completely dark. Sounds vanished. Touch disappeared. a sensory deprivation environment so complete that most species would go mad within minutes. Hours passed. The Vreli researchers checked their instruments. The human's brain activity was not just stable. It was active, exploring, adapting. How? Asked Dr. Krax. A junior researcher pulled up the brain scan data. He's not just surviving, she explained. He's growing, learning from the experience. More tests followed. Scenarios of total hopelessness. Situations designed to crush mental spirit. Challenges that would destroy the mind of any known species. Some men kept adapting. His brain rewired itself, created new neural pathways, found ways to understand and process information that should have been impossible to comprehend. The researchers became afraid. This was not just mental strength. This was something else entirely. A living system of psychological adaptation. Test after test failed. Each challenge became another opportunity for growth. We cannot break him, Dr. Krax finally admitted. The observation room went silent. Some men opened his eyes and smiled. The human had not just survived the most extreme psychological testing ever designed. He had transformed the entire experience into a learning opportunity. More than that, he had enjoyed it. The alien researchers realized something profound. Humans were not just another species. They were a psychological marvel, a living system of constant mental growth. Always changing, always learning, always becoming something new. The galaxy would never be the same. The Proxima battlefield looked like hell. Massive crystal ships of the Zard Empire filled the space. Their weapons could destroy entire planetary systems. They had conquered hundreds of worlds. No one had ever stopped them. Until now. Admiral Jayun Kang stood on the bridge of the human battleship. Her eyes were calm, her hands steady on the command console. The Zard attack came fast. Energy beams that could slice through metal like paper. Quantum disruption waves that could shut down entire computer systems. Weapons that had destroyed civilizations. But humans were different. Adaptive combat protocols, Jayun called. Her crew moved like a single living system, not following old military rules, creating new ones in real time. When the first energy beam hit, the ship's hull didn't just resist. It changed. Molecular structures shifted, absorbed the energy, transformed it into something useful. The Zard commanders watched in shock. Human ships didn't just defend. They learned. A Zard battleship fired its main weapon, a quantum disruptor designed to completely shut down all electronic systems. Against any other species, it would have been instant defeat. The human ships absorbed the signal, then sent it back. Multiplied. The Zard fleet suddenly found its own weapons turning against it. Jayun's fingers moved across the console. No traditional battle plan. No set strategy. Each moment was a new opportunity. Each challenge was a chance to create something new. Redirect energy, she called. Modify shield harmonics. Her crew responded instantly, not with military precision, but with living, breathing adaptation. The battle became something no one had ever seen. Human ships changed color, shifted shape, became something between a weapon and a living organism. They didn't just fight. They evolved with each passing moment. Zard commanders couldn't understand. How could ships move like this? How could a military force be so unpredictable? The answer was simple. Humans didn't see war as a fight between ships. They saw it as a complex problem to solve. Hours passed. The Zard fleet, once considered unbeatable, began to break. Not through superior firepower, but through something far more powerful. Adaptive intelligence. The ability to learn, to change, to become something new with each passing moment. As the last Zard ship fell, Jayun looked out at the stars. This was not just a victory. This was a demonstration. Humans were not just another species fighting for survival. They were a living system of constant transformation, always changing, always growing, always becoming something new. The galaxy would never be the same. The Universal Research Center was silent. Thousands of scientific representatives from across the galaxy gathered. They came to understand one thing: humans. Dr. Hyun-Soo Lee stood at the center of a massive holographic display. His presentation would change everything. "We are not special," he began. "We are simply different." The hologram showed something impossible: a complete map of human potential, not just biological, not just technological, but something far more complex. Adaptive markers appeared everywhere. In their DNA, in their technology, in their culture, in their thinking. Humans were not a fixed system. They were a living, breathing process of constant change. The Vrili research director leaned forward. Her crystalline body vibrated with tension. "Explain," she demanded. Hyun-Soo smiled. The hologram transformed. It showed how human potential worked, not as a fixed set of abilities, but as an open system of constant growth. Where other species saw limitations, humans saw opportunities. Biological challenges, humans would modify their bodies. Technological problems, humans would create new solutions. Cultural differences, humans would understand and integrate. The research center became very quiet. More data appeared. Comparison after comparison. Humans were not just surviving in the universe. They were transforming it. Their technology didn't just solve problems. It created new possibilities. Their biology didn't just resist change. It welcomed it. Their culture didn't just understand differences. It celebrated them. "We are a system of becoming," Hyun-Soo explained. The alien scientists calculated, compared, analyzed. Probability of human survival in unknown environments, 99.99%. Probability of human technological innovation, 98.7%. Probability of human cultural integration, 97.5%. Numbers that should have been impossible. The Clixian research ambassador spoke. "This is not evolution," he said. "This is something else." Hyun-Soo nodded. Humans were not just changing. They were change itself. A living process of constant transformation. More revelations followed. Human potential was not limited by current understanding. Each challenge was an opportunity to grow. Each problem was a chance to become something new. The research center became a place of wonder and fear, because humans were not just another species trying to survive. They were a force of constant adaptation, always moving, always changing, always becoming. The galaxy watched and wondered, what would humans become next? No one could predict. And that was the most terrifying thing of all. The edge of known space looked different now. Massive human exploration ships moved like living creatures, not mechanical, not biological, something in between, something new. Captain Jae-hyun Park stood on the bridge of the ISS Horizon, the same ship that had first encountered alien life. Now something else entirely. Generations had passed. Humans were no longer just a species from a small blue planet. They were a force of nature. The ship's systems breathed, moved, adapted. Each moment was a new possibility, each challenge an opportunity to grow. "Status," Jae-hyun called. His crew was not like crews of the past. Some were fully human. Some were part machine. Some were something else entirely. Biological systems merged with technology. Cultural understanding beyond simple communication. "All systems optimal," replied the ship's intelligence. "Not a computer, not an AI. Something more complex. The living system of constant adaptation." Outside, the universe waited. Alien species watched, tracked, calculated. What would humans become? No one knew, not even the humans themselves. The exploration ship moved through space. Its hull changed color, shifted shape, absorbed energy from stellar winds, transformed environmental challenges into opportunities for growth. Jae-hyun remembered stories from his grandparents, how humans once fought each other, how they struggled to survive on a single planet. Now, they were everywhere and nowhere, constantly changing. The ship passed through a massive energy storm. Where other vessels would be destroyed, this one adapted. Its molecular structure changed, absorbed the energy, transformed it. Interesting, Jae-hyun said softly. The ship's intelligence responded, not with words, with a complex series of emotional and mathematical signals. Communication had become something else entirely. More than language, more than technology. A living process of understanding. Alien observation vessels followed, watched, calculated. Humans were a mystery, a force that could not be predicted, could not be understood, could only be experienced. The universe was changing, and humans were the catalyst. Not through destruction, not through conquest, but through a simple, powerful idea. Change is not something that happens to you. Change is something you become. The ISS horizon moved forward, into the unknown, always changing, always growing, always becoming. The only certainty was uncertainty itself, and in that uncertainty, humans found their greatest strength.